Right, so news that has echoed around the world now is that the International Criminal Court, the ICC, have finally, after much preamble and apparent delay, now submitted applications for arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and 3 key members of Hamas as well. Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader, Mohammed Diab Ibrahim Al-Masri, better known as Dief, the Commander-in-Chief of Hamas's military wing, the Al-Qassam Brigades, and Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas's political bureau. There's no cogent argument that the ICC here is acting in the interests of one side or the other, despite claims to the contrary. The threats the ICC, despite showing even-handedness, and even the claims that it isn't supposed to be a proper court, coming down against it, but merely a Western device there to promote their interests and use against Africa and thugs like Putin. The ICC has more work to do beyond Hamas and Israel, but this move by the ICC is far cleverer than at first glance it might seem. And I have to take my hat off to the Chief Prosecutor for showing some real guts and playing the game he's going to have to in order for any justice to be seen. Right, so first off, having made several videos questioning ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan for what has seemed like him dragging his heels, given how quickly we've seen the ICC's sister organisation at The Hague, the ICJ, leap into action on the matter of Israel and Gaza, I feel the need to acknowledge that actually he's owed a bit of an apology. He's played an absolute blinder here. There's got pro-Israel politicians screaming up the walls and Netanyahu doing his typical turn of basically just calling the ICC anti-Semitic. But for every Burke slamming his decision to apply for arrest warrants for both Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, the fact he's also applied for arrest warrants for 3 key Hamas operatives as well completely undermines any argument that the ICC is taking sides. It quite simply isn't. On top of that, part of what has taken so long to get where we are now is that Khan knew he'd have to have every T crossed and every I dotted on the evidence gathered, in triplicate probably, so as to leave no room for doubt at all, that there was a case here to answer, and in that light had assembled a team of leading human rights lawyers to work on the case as well, including, as it happens, Amal Clooney, someone who has come in for a bit of flack due to her silence on the matter of Israel and Gaza. But of course, doing what she'd been doing behind the scenes, she clearly couldn't. So a lesson there for the celeb blocking people that silence doesn't always mean complicity. But in a lengthy statement, which I'm not going to read, the ICC's Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan has outlined the remit of his investigation, which is only from the events of October 7th onwards, it has to be said, and the charges he would like to bring against the aforementioned individuals. For the 3 individuals from Hamas, the charges he has requested arrest warrants on the grounds of read: extermination as a crime against humanity, contrary to Article 7.1b of the Rome Statute; murder as a crime against humanity, contrary to Article 7.1a, and as a war crime, contrary to Article 8.2ci, taking hostages as a war crime, contrary to Article 8.2ciii; rape and other acts of sexual violence as crimes against humanity, contrary to Article 7.1g, and also as war crimes pursuant to Article 8.2evi in the context of captivity; torture as a crime against humanity, contrary to Article 7.1f, and also as a war crime contrary to Article 8.2ci in the context of captivity; other inhumane acts as a crime against humanity, contrary to Article 7.1k in the context of captivity; cruel treatment as a war crime contrary to Article 8.2ci in the context of captivity; and outrages upon personal dignity as a war crime contrary to Article 8.2cii in the context of captivity. Certainly these are accusations made against Hamas that we have heard much of. Clearly the ICC has evidence of these to bring forward, and indeed, as much as we talk about Palestine being occupied territory and the Palestinian people having the right to resist occupation, actions such as these do not excuse that, I feel. We know they took hostages, we know why, but being signatories to the ICC, Palestine, be it the West Bank or Gaza, they know this is off limits. And of course everything else listed there should be obviously prosecuted if proven. Same goes for Israel though. The ICC Chief Prosecutor and his team bring forward the following charges against Netanyahu and Gallant: starvation of civilians as a method of warfare as a war crime contrary to Article 8.2b XXV of the statute; willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health contrary to Article 8.2a III, or cruel treatment as a war crime contrary to Article 8.2ci; willful killing contrary to Article 82AI, or murder as a war crime contrary to Article 82CI. Intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population as a war crime contrary to Articles 82BI or 82EI. Extermination and or murder contrary to Articles 71B and 71A, including in the context of deaths caused by starvation as a crime against humanity. Persecution as a crime against humanity contrary to Article 71H. Other inhumane acts such as crimes against humanity contrary to Article 71K. Now, the problem Israel have is that these charges have all very much played out on camera to the public eye, because whereas the charges against Hamas relate to the events of one night on October 7th for the most part, for Israel's leaders, it's been 7 months of optics. We know aid is being blocked. We know settlers are responsible in no small part for this. And we know the Israeli government has done nothing to stop them from doing that, causing great suffering. Just look at the number of women and children killed or permanently maimed as a result of their actions. The scale of the deaths speak for themselves. 40,000 dead Gazans, 70% of them women and children. Extermination and murder, the mass graves and hospital grounds are what immediately spring to mind there. And as for persecution, well, that's been a 76-year-long crime, hasn't it? But certainly the forced displacement is what I think of, first off, that has been going on since October 7th. Israeli crimes seem far more obvious because we've watched them play out on our screens for months. And so I think the application for arrest warrants here are the most likely to go through. Though I imagine, as I said, with the work that has clearly gone on in the time spent preparing this case, I'd be surprised if any of these arrest warrants ended up being denied in the end. And if so, particularly those Israeli ones, I'd suspect political interference at play. The reaction to these applications for arrest warrants, though, from the rest of the world kind of implies that the reality of the situation hasn't been lost on many others either. And the go-to excuse for Israel right now, particularly from US and UK spokespeople and politicians, is that the ICC has no remit to prosecute Israel. No calls that they are innocent, except from the Elon Levy's of this world, certainly call that the ICC are actually racist for what they're doing. Because, of course, some will have said that, because they always do. But trying to say the ICC has no jurisdiction, or worse, that this isn't what they were created for, really does show some fear and some hands being played by politicians who have, through their support for Netanyahu and his regime, made themselves complicit in genocide now. I'm going to park that issue, particularly for now. I'm going to cover the other politicians who are now facing complicity in another video. But what they are saying about the ICC is just false and downright offensive when they come out with lines like the ICC is built for Africa and thugs like Putin and not for the West and its allies.
And of course, I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me. We don't view it like that. This court is the legacy of Nuremberg. This court is a sad indictment of humanity. This court should be the triumph of law over power and brute force. Grab what you can, take what you want, do what you will. And we're going to simply be, we're not going to be dissuaded by threats or any other activities, because in the end we have to fulfill our responsibilities as prosecutors, as the men and women of the office, as judges, as the registry.
So the ICC is just a club for the West to beat others with, but not their allies then? It's not a court in which case then? Well, Karim Khan has said absolutely not, that he's not having this, and is acting accordingly. I'd like to know which political leader it was that decided to opine to Khan in such an offensive manner. They have no place leading a brass band, let alone be in power in a nation state. But on that point of jurisdiction, if that is the go-to position for those still seeking to defend Israel, now skating on very thin ice with regards being found complicit in the genocide Israel is engaged in themselves. Palestine is a signatory of the Rome Statute. The UN recognised Palestine as a state in that they've signed up to this, the very basic, the bedrock of the ICC that court is built on. The UK and the US do not recognise Palestine as a state, but just because they don't acknowledge a Palestinian state, that to them it is all Israel and some occupied territory that Israel controls, that it's only about them, and because Israel are not signatories, that means the ICC has no jurisdiction. Well, it doesn't wash. The ICC, for one, found jurisdiction against Russia, against Putin, when neither Russia nor Ukraine are actually signatories of the ICC. And that was celebrated and welcomed. thus proving the ICC is viewed as a device supposed to act in Western interests and not actually as an arbiter in global law. But the current Chief Prosecutor says otherwise, and thank goodness for that. Now we wait and see if those arrest warrants get granted and what the response to that will be. Meanwhile, as Israel predictably loses its mind over this latest move, they've carried on attacking Gaza as well as the West Bank and are still attacking aid trucks as they come in. Settlers now choosing to cripple aid trucks by wrecking the tyres and then looting and destroying the goods being carried, thus proving these charges being levied by the ICC against Israel. Certainly proves one of those cases for one of those arrest warrants at any rate. Check out that story in this video recommendation here though, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers folks.